And okay, recording. Good.
Sorry about that. So we usually put it on our
Yeah.
website, if that's okay with you.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
And the process that I began using long ago called selective awareness, and what I've been able to learn, I'd like to share with you how it might be useful to you. You know, back when I was in grade school, I didn't behave very well in class. In fact, it was so bad that at one point I was kicked out of class so often that I was assigned to simply report to the dean's office every morning and just to stay there throughout the entire day. They told me this was going on my permanent record, so I suppose you all know this about me already. Well, I was only bored for a little while because I was fortunate in that I discovered that immediately adjacent to the bench I had to sit on all day were the complete works of Arthur Conan Doyle in a bookshelf. And I fell in love with Sherlock Holmes and the way he thought. And I've always thought of myself as being like an investigator, like a detective. So anyway, so I'll start off with sharing with you an apocryphal story of my hero. It seems that once upon a time, Sherlock and Dr. Watson went camping, and long after bedtime one night, perhaps 2 o'clock in the morning, Sherlock elbowed Watson and said, "Look up, Mr. Watson, and tell me what you see." And Watson looked up and says, "I see stars, stars everywhere against the black, black sky." And Holmes said, "Yes, yes. And what does that tell you, Watson?" He said, "Astronomically, it tells me that there are millions of galaxies and billions of stars. Teleologically, it tells me that God is great and everywhere, and we are small and insignificant. Meteorologically, it tells me that tomorrow is probably going to be a nice, clear day. Why, what does it tell you, Sherlock?" And Sherlock answered, "Elementary, my dear Watson. Someone stole our tent." So, and I use that little story as a metaphor for my experience as I went through my training in medicine. And although I trained at one of the top schools, Albert Einstein in New York, which is well known for respecting patients' different personal and spiritual needs, I was amazed at the lack of attention paid to patient thoughts and feelings and expectations and personal sensitivities. Very seldom did they pay much attention to the phenomena such as these. So it was, on the other hand, to me, as a young developing physician, it was evident that people's susceptibility to illness and their speed of recovering from illness greatly depended upon these factors, because I saw that it made a difference how I talked to people. It made a difference if a person had a rash, if I didn't shy away from it and put on gloves, but I touched the rash. And people would tell, "Oh my gosh, he's touching the rash. Maybe it's not so bad." Or if I was telling a person what they were going to need to do to heal up an injured knee, I put my hand on the knee as I explained the positive things that were going to happen through the healing process. So as we know, Western medicine has done a great job of taking care of acute injuries, infections, and emergencies. But right now, most of the illnesses that we see these days are really lifestyle diseases of the 21st century. And that was something I began to see there back in the 60s. And I'm going to see if I can put some images on the screen.
If you go to the share screen there, and that should give your desktop.
Yeah.
And there you go.
And so let's see. Let me get through this. This is my title I put in, which is Unlock the Power of Mind-Body Healing. Transformation through what I call selective awareness. And we'll be talking about a set of mind tools for accessing the healing state. We'll learn something about guiding your thoughts, imagery, and passion to heal the body, mind, emotion, spirit, and behavior. To have some experience of what a deeply relaxed state is, and learn something about how to access and use that power, and to experience a new paradigm of thinking and healing, and how to upgrade your mental operating system so that it favors healing. Now, medical research is easy enough to find if you Google it, estimates that as many as 90% of illness and disease is stress-related, including high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, heart disease, ulcers, obesity, type 2 diabetes, allergies, asthma, migraine headaches, and so on. Center for Disease Control, it says, their beliefs are that 83% of all deaths for adults between the ages of 21 and 65 are directly related to lifestyle. Now, a lot of us know these facts now, but no one seemed to know that back in the 60s and 70s. There was no proof that I had, but I had a powerful intuition based on personal observation. As Henry Thoreau said, you don't always need a scientific experiment. Some circumstantial evidence is very strong, like when you find a trout in your milk in the morning. So in time, I began to see that a tremendous number of the problems that people have come down to how they think, what they believe, their emotional reactions, and their behaviors. And that many times headaches, backaches, ulcerative colitis, asthma, upset stomach, and so forth are simply reflections of people's emotions, which in turn are the result of how they're thinking, which in turn comes from the algorithms they are using to process and try to deal with the challenges in their lives. But what I discovered back then was that figuring out a way to make a clinical intervention was much more complicated than figuring out the etiology of the problems that people have. You find your percentage of success is pretty low if you try to get people to change by confronting them with the fact that their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are the source of my illness. What do you mean? Telling me it's all in my mind or something like, no. So it's very difficult to do that. And if you try it too much, people stop coming to see you and they go to see somebody that gives them a pill because they have much more faith in the pill fairy than they do in you. So my goal will be to share with you today a set of mind tools that will help us be able to deal with that situation. So after I finished serving my time in the U.S. Army, protecting the West Coast from Viet Cong possible attackers, then toward the end of my service, quite by accident, or maybe it was by divine guidance, I don't know, towards the end of the 1960s, I discovered medical hypnosis. I saw that people could be operated on without anesthesia. I watched how panicky moods and despair could be changed in a very short period of time, how a hypnotic experience could melt away anger and anxiety. I listened to the chest of an asthmatic child and heard how the wheezes went away as the child was given suggestions to let them go away. I saw how normal saline could relieve a person's anxiety. I could see how hypnosis could be used to relieve pain in childbirth, how people's desire for smoking and alcohol could vanish, and on was astounding. And this happened because I happened to have been stationed at Fort Ord down in Monterey California. And there was a group of physicians there who were regularly practicing hypnotherapy in their offices, and they began to introduce me to these things. Now, of course, not 100% effectiveness in every illness with hypnosis, but there's enough was there to amaze and startle me. And so I started to do research. I was surprised to find that back in 1955, the American Medical Association had carefully studied medical hypnosis and concluded that it was very effective in many cases and that every doctor should have 50 hours of training in hypnosis. But how could that be? I'd just gone to this really great medical school and nobody said anything about this, wonderful tool that was available. And throughout my training, I saw people suffering, even though they were receiving the best medical and surgical treatment, but they were suffering because their humanity wasn't being dealt with. So I went into practice with Dr. Peter Mutke. That was 1970, 69, 70. Peter Mutke was one of the best and best known medical hypnotherapists on the West Coast. And although his practice was a primary care practice, in fact, he was an orthopedic surgeon, he was so well known that there was a continuous stream of phone calls from people who wanted to come in to have their mental, physical, emotional, and behavioral illnesses dealt with through hypnotic procedures. So working with him, he actually had me come and sit through his sessions with people. And it was absolutely fascinating. And he also took me down to Esalen Institute, where he had been lecturing on hypnosis and hypnotherapy. And what an amazing place that was in 1970. That was really the place that the Eastern religions and philosophies really got a foothold in our country. And that's the place that hot tubs were not invented, but certainly popularized. The teachings from the East were particularly fascinating to me because they were interested in letting go and in emptiness. Like the Tao Te Ching is a beautiful bunch of readings in praise of emptiness. And whereas every American knows that bigger is better and that getting and winning is better than losing, and that you should cling to everything that you own. And then, as the old bumper sticker from Silicon Valley said, he who dies with the most toys wins. On the other hand, these people, they focused on surrender, on letting go, and being non-attached. Huh? How opposite to our philosophy of move fast and break things. Huh? Amazing. And so here we are in the middle of this Western culture filled with anxiety and insecurity, surrounded by TV commercials and airbrush models and fast-talking politicians, every one of them telling you that you're not enough and you won't be enough unless you buy their product or vote for their candidate or join their gang. In other words, armies of attention engineers are doing everything that they can to snatch your attention. They've only got 3 seconds to grab your attention. And what grabs your attention better than something that says, uh-oh, you're in trouble. Yeah, there's a conspiracy, breaking news. Huh? So they want you to feel anxious. They want you to feel afraid. They want you to be angry, ticked off, and they want you to feel inadequate, because this is the key to their being able to gain profit from you, to sell you their product, or to make you vote for their candidate or give to their charity. And of course, by doing that, behaving in that way, I mean, you can't do everything that everybody tells you. The average city dweller is exposed to somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 commercial messages every single day. But every message is telling you that you're not enough. Every message is telling you that you should be anxious. And of course, with what we've seen in the last 5 or 10 years, it's they're just becoming better and better at doing it. And we're in the process of watching our democracy become, I mean, it's just to fall apart in front of us. You know, the authoritarian governments are gathering together. Hey, man, you can see what's going on. What's the matter? We can't even get along. It used to be a time when one politician would say to another, I see what you're saying, and I see what the basis of what you're sharing is, and you made some good points. However, I kind of see things a little differently, and I wonder if you mind if I share with you what I see. Oh no, why, of course, sir, go ahead, and I'd be happy to listen to it. Right? It's not that way anymore. Now, I'm right, and you're an asshole. You're a fool. You're an idiot. I don't have to listen to you. You know, I mean, it was that moment when our first Black president is speaking in front of the Congress and someone yells out, "You lie!" I mean, what? But that's just the beginning. It's gotten worse and worse. Well, that's the world that we live in. And so, of course, we're filled with anxiety. Children are committing suicide. Levels of depression are going up. I mean, it's ridiculous because it doesn't look like we're going to make it. And nobody, I mean, gradually people are becoming less and less interested in religion. People don't even believe anymore, except for those people who are very militant and insist upon changing the laws to make the rest of us behave in the way that's right for their religion. But all of this is splitting us apart. So here we have these people from the East with these other tools, and what these tools allow people to do is how to relax. And I'll say a little bit more what's important about relaxing. And I don't just mean, oh, yeah, it's good to relax. I mean, discovering how to relax deeply and thoroughly, because that's where the magic begins. So what I did was I learned everything that I could from those different religions, and it was excellent. And so there was an opportunity to do some controlled and uncontrolled experiments with psilocybin, with lysergic acid diethylamide, by DMT, with Adam, or what they call ecstasy now, and so forth. And it was fascinating what we were able to discover, and which is just gradually coming out to light now, 45 years later. Wow. And so what I did was I combined my learnings from all of these different studies and experiments, and also the studies by Dr. Ivan Pavlov. And of course, what Pavlov did, by exposing a dog to a bell and a dish of food on several occasions, pretty soon, if you ring that bell, the dog will act like it's about to get food. It will salivate. It will begin to send blood into its stomach. It'll wag its tails, its eyes, its pupils will dilate, and so forth. And however, if you just keep ringing the bell and you don't give that dog food, that conditioned reflex will die away. So he also conditioned dogs to have an enormous amount of fear when he rang a bell, because he shocked them when he rang the bell. And that it was a way that he could then, you would negatively condition the dog. But if you keep ringing the bell, it doesn't self-extinguish, because the dog thinks it's escaping from the pain that the bell makes it think that it's feeling, and it's not. But you could decondition the dog by giving the dog a plate of food and then playing a recording of the bell very softly and making it louder and louder and louder and louder. And pretty soon, I'm not all in one setting, of course, you'd have to do this in a number of different days, but pretty soon the dog's eating, you can ring the bell at full volume and you see no signs of the running around screaming, losing control of its bowels and bladder and so forth. Like, it was gone. And then the next day you put them in and you don't feed them, you just ring the bell. What does the dog do? That's right, it salivates and starts wagging its tail because you have switched it over. I'll give you a quick example of how that rapidly happened. A woman came to see me because her company in San Francisco was moving from the ground floor up to the 17th floor of a building. And she was extremely afraid of heights. She could not even look out a window of a second floor apartment. The thought of moving up to the 17th floor just threw her into total panic. And she came to see me, and using a simple technique, a reframing technique, I asked her unconscious mind, what was the purpose of her fear? And she said the purpose of her, no, it said the purpose of her fear was to protect her. So I asked that part of herself, what other behaviors could she find that would protect her as well or better than fear? And she came up with the answer, smiling. Okay, so I gave her a tape to take home, because what I started doing was recording the guided imagery that I did in the office. Everybody would go home with a tape specifically designed to help them reprogram their minds. She did that, and she came back to see me a couple of weeks ago, a couple of weeks after that, and said she's feeling fine. And I said, well, tell me what happened. She said she went into the building, she got on the elevator, and as the elevator started to move up, she felt that familiar fear beginning to come on. And so she smiled, and everybody else smiled back at her, and her fear was gone. And that was it. One of my most favorite rapid cures. Well, I didn't see her again for about 3 or 4 years. I was shopping in San Francisco for Christmas in Macy's, and I ran into her. She says, Dr. Miller. I said, oh, how's everything going? I said, how's everything up on the 17th floor? She says, let me tell you, guess what my new hobby is? I said, no, what? She said, rock climbing. We're climbing Half Dome next weekend, right? Now, I'm not going to climb Half Dome, but I'm not afraid of heights. Because once she got up to those heights, she saw what she had never seen in her whole 23, 24 years of life. How beautiful things look at that height. Now, what I'm saying is that we are programmed to see the world and to react in the world in certain ways, and it can be, it's something that can be changed. And the basis of how to change it has to do with your having the ability to be relaxed, to be calm, to be present. And how you get there, you can get there through a guided imagery experience. You can get there through meditating. You can get there through deep prayer. You can get there through hypnosis or self-hypnosis. You can get there to a certain degree by listening to certain kinds of music. And so the important thing is to be able to get to that level of relaxation. So before I go on talking about it, I want to take a moment and give you an opportunity to have some experience of what I'm talking about. And so what I would like to do is to offer you some thoughts, some suggestions as to what you might do. My experience is that if people follow these expressions, these suggestions, that they begin to get some sense of what this state of mind is that I call the healing state, or I sometimes think of as a reprogramming state for the deeper levels of the mind. I was a computer programmer before I went to medical school, so I could see right away how the mind operated in a way very analogous to a computer, and what we really needed to do was to reprogram. So if you will listen and follow all of these suggestions, they're very gentle and they have to do with your being at peace. So let your body be at rest in a comfortable position, free from any constriction, and free from having, for you having to hold on to anything. And choose a point in the distance to let your eyes focus on. And as you let your eyes focus on that point in the distance, just take a deep breath in. And as you let it out, let it be a feeling of letting go. Just releasing and letting go. Think of this as a moment to relax. You're not going to be interrupted, and so you can allow yourself to rest. Become aware of the fact that at this moment in time, there's no other place that you need to go. There's nothing else that you need to do. And there's no problem that you have to solve at this moment in time. And therefore, you can give yourself permission to relax, to let go of all unnecessary stress and tension, to allow your mind and body to come into harmony, and to awaken and strengthen your own inner healing powers. Take another deep breath in, and as you let it out, allow your eyelids to close. And behind your closed eyelids, let your eyes roll gently upward so that your eyelids become very, very relaxed. And behind your soft, warm eyelids, imagine you can see there on the back of your forehead the word relax, or an image or symbol that represents relaxation to you. And as you allow your eyelids to relax all the way down to the point they feel like they just don't want to open at all, heavy and peacefully relaxed. And when you feel your eyelids so relaxed that you can test them, feel their heaviness and imagine they're so heavy they just don't want to open at all. And as you test your eyelids, let that feeling of relaxation from your eyelids flow throughout the rest of your body. Imagine relaxation flowing like ripples out of your eyelids through your scalp, through all the muscles of your face. Relaxation flowing outward like ripples from a stone thrown into the quiet, still surface of a mountain pond. Ripples of relaxation flowing from your eyelids into your forehead and over your scalp, relaxing every muscle in your scalp, ripples flowing through all the muscles of your face, muscles around your mouth gently relaxing. As it does, you may notice your upper and lower teeth gently drift apart a little bit. Let the relaxation flow down through your neck and your shoulders, almost as if you can imagine yourself standing beneath a gentle waterfall of warm relaxation flowing over your head, relaxing your scalp, a soft, shimmering shower of sweet relaxation flowing through your forehead, through all the muscles of your face, down through your shoulders and your arms and your elbows, your forearms and wrists and hands, all the way down to your fingers. And as you feel that relaxation reach your fingertips, feel the heaviness, the warmth, the tingling of the relaxation as it reaches your fingertips. And as you feel it, take another deep breath in, draw the relaxation up through your arms into your chest. And as you let it out, release all tension from your chest and back and let the air do the breathing for you. Nothing to do, just relaxing and enjoying the rising and falling of your chest, your rising and falling of your abdomen, a gentle massage to all your internal organs, your lower back relaxing, peace and calm flowing through your muscles, all the way down through your thighs and your knees, your legs and your ankles and your feet, right out through the tips of your toes. And as each breath effortlessly leaves, think to yourselves the words, "It breathes me. It breathes me." And after each breathing out, let yourself sink down into that little pause after you breathe out and before the next breath comes in. This is the quietest time of all for all your mind and body. And it exists there between the out-breath and the in-breath, always. No matter where you are, no matter what's happening around you, if you choose to, you can pause. Focus your breath in this way. Focus on your breath in this way. And then allow yourself to be guided into this pause. Good. And now let's use your imagination a little bit and imagine that your body feels very light and peaceful, as if you're floating. You're floating gently on a magic carpet of relaxation, floating gently through time and space to a very pleasant experience. Perhaps one of those happiest moments in your life, one of those holy moments, maybe the moment you first saw your newborn child. Or maybe it's a time when you had a particularly wonderful vacation. Or a certain time in a certain place in the world that you love. Maybe you're sitting on the beach or on a mountaintop or in a beautiful garden. Or maybe you were there with someone you love deeply or someone who loved you deeply. Let yourself float to this special place. Picture it in your mind's eye as if you can look around and see the colors and shapes. Maybe they're blurry at first, but in your imagination, allow them to become more clear and maybe hear the sounds around you in this beautiful place. Feel the texture of anything that you're touching. And if you don't come up with a place that you've been to, just make one up. Could be a fantasy place, but go there, be there. Let yourself be in it. And anytime any unnecessary thoughts come along, imagine that unnecessary thought is like words written on a blackboard in your mind's eye. And remember that relaxation in your eyelids. And as you gently test your eyelids, imagine you're drawing a wet eraser across your mental blackboard, erasing the unnecessary thought and sending another wave of soothing relaxation flowing throughout your body. Right down, out through the palms of your hands, right down and out through the soles of your feet. Good. Let your body absorb the love and the peace and the serenity of this moment. Feel the joy and the wholeness. And focus on that place in your body where you feel it the most clearly. The relaxation, the peace, the wholeness, the health, the love. And as you do, squeeze two of your fingers together that you can use as a signal so that anytime you wish to come back to this place and this feeling, you may do so by simply relaxing and squeezing these two fingers together and picturing this scene. Good. Great. Now, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to take a deep breath and to let it out. And as you do, to gently allow your awareness to return back to the place where your body is comfortably resting. Take a deep breath in. And as you let it out, allow your eyes to slowly open with soft vision so you can just enjoy the colors and shapes that you see and think wide awake, feeling fresh and clear. Good. Now, this is just a very brief experiential introduction. Some of you may have found yourself becoming profoundly relaxed. Others may have held on to tensions. You may have allowed your thoughts to wander into the past or the future, to compare or judge, or to evaluate or criticize. However, if you truly like to have those kinds of experiences that I want to speak of, you'll find you're much more successful if you've given yourself an opportunity to learn the techniques such as this, just by practicing. If it wasn't easy for you, it's not easy for you the first time you sit down to play a scale on a piano. But if you practice it a little bit, you can learn to do it. And in the same way, and of course, when you learn to play the scale on the piano, it's not your muscles that are learning, right? It's your nervous system. And that's what we're talking about training here. And I'm sure that you're aware of the studies that have indicated when people have a month of training, let's say, in simple mindfulness meditation, which is really similar to the one that we just did, you can see the tracks running from their prefrontal cortex down to their amygdala, down to their hippocampus, tracks carrying gamma aminobutyric acid producing relaxation, and you can see it on an fMRI. So, and let me say, an easy way to learn this is for you to have a voice to follow. One of the products that I've created, and I've been creating these products since 1972, this one's called Creating Your Island of Peace. The best known recording for reducing stress in the world at this point is letting go of stress. There's 4 different experiences for relieving stress. That's myself playing together with Stephen Halpern. And there's another one called Writing Your Own Script, which is more focused on some of the processes that I'll be sharing with you in a few moments. And all of these can be found at shop.drmiller.com. And just as you can go to my website, which is drmiller.com. The website that's there at the moment is about 15 years old, so it's pretty ancient. However, I'm going to be replacing it in about 2 or 3 weeks, and it's going to be a much more complete website, including so much more of my recent work. So you can take a look at it now, but I encourage you to go back in a little while and look at it. But I think it'll really be worthwhile. So one of the things that I became aware of and started working a lot with is stress. This is back in the, again, back in the 1970s, most people didn't even know the word stress. And even those who knew what it was knew the word, didn't really know what it was. And people today still don't understand stress. The most important thing that I try to teach people is that stress is not something that happens to you. Stress is something that you do with what happens to you. A very, very important point, because stress is a reaction of your body and your mind, your nervous system, the non-specific reaction to a perceived demand. It's initiated by the limbic system, the unconscious part of your mind that lives in your paleocortex. So I call it your monkey mind, because it's set up just like a monkey brain. It's also called System 1 by Daniel Kahneman. If you haven't read it, you should. He won a Nobel Prize for this. It's called Fast Thinking and Slow Thinking. It's a beautiful, wonderful book. But at any rate, of course, the word stress, unfortunate word, stress. It shouldn't be called stress, because stress already has a definition. You put stress on an element of a bridge. So stress is something that's exerted by the outside, whereas stress in a human being is not from the outside. It is from the inside. And what he discovered back in 1936 was, in working with animals, no matter what the animals were sick with, no matter what caused their death, when he examined their organs, he found a familiar pattern: GI bleeding, enlarged adrenals, shrunken thymus, and others. He went to the professors and say, hey, here's a syndrome nobody seems to know anything about. And they said, we're not interested in it because it does not help us make a diagnosis. And so it's useless. And so Selye's work was discarded back then. So it didn't stop him. He went on ahead and developed a theory called the general adaptation syndrome. And this is when an animal, in a particularly a mammal, they're alarmed, and so there's immediate things that happen. And there's the alarm phase, then there's a resistance phase, and the animal's body is trying to figure out how to solve the problem. Once it figures out how to solve the problem, then it's able to go through the recovery phase. This kind of a stress reaction is very useful where we grew up 100,000 years ago. It is finite stressors that are finite and short-lived, like let's say you're being attacked by a saber-toothed tiger, or let's say a tree is about to fall on you, or a landslide or a flood. Okay, it's you've got a few seconds to escape or fight, and if you don't, then you're finished. The demand is from an easily identified source. If you hear that lion roaring at you, you know where the stressor is. It is very present. You're not being stressed by what happened yesterday, and you're not worried about what happens tomorrow, not 100,000 years ago. And these kinds of stressors can be resolved by analyzing and responding physically to the current situation. And what really happens, if you ever had that experience where you almost died and you didn't, like you hit the ice and your car goes spinning into the other lane of the freeway and spins and you're hanging on for dear life, and it finally comes to a stop and you realize you're still alive, what do? You go, ooh. You relax. And you have a period of increased relaxation. All animals demonstrate this too, because stress is a two-phase operation. The first is the activation phase, and the second is the recovery phase. Just like all the organs, you breathe in and then you let it go. Your heart constricts and then it relaxes. It's meant to relax like that. If you try to convert somebody, try shocking them during that little space there around the T wave while it's recovering. You throw them into a fatal arrhythmia because we're designed to have that. You see that you have hunger and then your hunger is satisfied. There's sexual stimulation and reactivity. And then what? Then for a little while, you can't do anything anymore. There's a refractory phase. And so this is very natural in many areas of our bodies. And in particular, it is that way for stress. And so this was fine because you only had stresses, maybe one every few days or so. And in between, you were pretty relaxed. You're not worried about anything. And so what happens is over time, some days are stressful, other days are relaxed, stress, relax. Well, there's a kind of stability, a kind of a moving homeostasis inside of you. And so that nothing is building up inside. And this form of reacting to the environment is just wonderful. It works fine. But now let's come up to the 21st century. It's a different kind of stress here. Cavemen didn't have computers. 21st century stress. Our stresses are social stressors. Demands and challenges. They're not helped, but hindered by tension, anger, anxiety, resentment, jealousy, and the toxic stress chemicals that are exuded. These chemicals, so we say your corticoids, your cortisol, and the other chemicals that are going on in there, their basic job is to dissolve the organs of your body and turn them into glucose so that you can fight or flight like hell for 10 or 20 or 30 seconds, maybe a minute or two in a rare case. But that's it. Not something that's continuing to bang on you all day, every day. The phone's ringing, you've got faxes, you've got instant messages, you've got emails, people are yelling at you from here, from there. The pop-up ads are in your face constantly, keeping you that way. So what does it do? It injures your organs. And of course, I'm speaking as a scientist. I've been studying this for 50 years, and you can find out the proof for all of this. I'm not going to waste your time by giving you the, my sources. You can find them easier enough. It shortens your telomeres, stress, and it invites illness. Students that are under stress are far more likely to get the flu when flu season comes around, for instance, and they're slower to recover. And the stresses that we have, this builds up inside of us because we're never getting a chance to go. And so this continued chemical stressor leads us to want to escape, right? And how do we escape? In ways that often are deleterious. Alcohol, drugs, we become emotionally withdrawn. We become addicted to various things. Sometimes we become bullies. We turn to violence. We turn to drinking. We turn to overeating. All of these things, which of course don't solve the problem, they create, in fact, the problems that is making us wealthy by giving them pills to try to hide their symptoms from them. And then the most important thing of all, to me, is that when we're in these stressful states and feelings like anger, anxiety, fear, grief, jealousy, irritation, frustration, all of these are responses of the limbic system. And that what we are experiencing is a kind of a post-hypnotic stress disorder on a nationwide basis. Now we call it complex PTSD, but it's the same thing. Well, all of these, and when you want to know whether you're stressed, look at what your feelings are. That's a pretty good indication. But all of these emotions and all of stress tends to inhibit your prefrontal cortex, right? It inhibits your prefrontal cortex. And in so doing, it prevents you from being able to contemplate wisely, prevents you from drawing on your wisdom and your spiritual resources. It blocks strategy and planning. Those things can't happen because this is like, you're dead in 3 minutes. You've got to, it's not like you don't want to look and say, oh, look at that tiger's beautiful eyes. Oh my God, saber-toothed tigers have blue eyes? Where else have I ever heard this? You're finished. So you're not there to think. And yet the problems that we're confronted with require that we're able to be wise, be able to think and to strategize and to draw on our resources, including our social resources. And so somebody calls and you what? You let the deal fall through? And it just seems like a really good idea to smash your $1,000 cell phone into the stone fireplace. Oh, what did I do? That's what I mean by not having your wisest behavior available to you. So this kind of type 2 stress that we feel, it's not something happening in the moment. It's future oriented. It's intangible. It's not a tiger we can fight with. It's a social challenge, not a physical challenge. There's no clear response. You can't punch your boss in the nose as much as you might like to. And it accumulates within us. And as it accumulates within us, we get above a symptom threshold and we begin to have symptoms. We start feeling tension in our bodies, neck aches, we have a headache, a familiar pain in the neck. We feel anger, we have insomnia, frustration, allergies, infections, and it goes on and on and on and on. And as these symptoms come up, then of course, that's what we go to. Then we go to the pill fairy to get the pill to help that symptom go away. So there we are in our stressed out place, being distracted by this, that, and the other thing. Quick, look over here, look over there. Now, so our way out of it, it's about the power of now. What is causing our stress is when we believe there's a conflict. Let's say I wanted to take the family out for a beautiful picnic today. That was going to be wonderful. It's our only time we're going to get to do it this whole month. And what happens? When you know it, it's raining. It's raining and sleet. That's the end of it. Then we get upset by that. Because what's happening is what we want to happen and what is happening is different. These two ideas being in the mind at the same time cause cognitive dissonance. That cognitive dissonance is experienced as a conflict. There's a conflict between these two ideas. Well, the monkey mind, the limbic system says, conflict? Oh, I know how to deal with conflict. Okay, let's pump some cortisone. Hey, we need more adrenaline up here. And we're off and running. So when you think about the negative feelings that come up, it's virtually always associated with your thinking about the past or the future. If you simply come into the present moment so that your mind is focused on what you are experiencing right now at this place, you'll find that you can relax because you're in a safe place. And breathing feels really kind of good. Every new breath is like, and each breath out is a release. How wonderful that is. And if you open your eyes, you see colors and you see shapes. And so a thought comes along and you say, a thought is like a whiff of smoke. You don't have to think that. And when your prefrontal cortex is working, your prefrontal cortex is the executive level of your mind, it is capable of telling you what to ignore. And so you ignore unnecessary thoughts. You can come down to being at peace. No matter how upset you were, you have the possibility, as long as you're not physically in danger of being injured in the next 5 minutes, you can come to that place of complete peace. And when you come to that place of complete peace, then and only then can you come up with the wisest possible solution to whatever is triggering or was triggering the stressful feeling within you. And so, of course, what we're looking at is we have this reptilian brain, which is basically instinctual stuff, heart rate, breathing, body temperature, balance, the oldest part of the brain, central nervous system. Then a bit higher, we have our limbic brain and the paleomammalian cortex, what I call the monkey brain, because it's like having a monkey inside of us. And you ever think about it? When you get angry, it's not because you've decided hey, I think I'll really get angry today. When you're feeling anxious, it's not you say, I think what will probably help me with my speech is if I get anxious today. It's not like that. You don't choose your feelings. Your emotions are chosen by your monkey mind, and it's chosen because the way you are conceptualizing the world is that you see a conflict. Whereas if you can see the world differently, what I learned from Gandhi was Gandhi said, the ally that you must always seek is the part of your adversary that knows what is right. Got to think twice on that. The ally that you must always seek is the part of your adversary that knows what is right. So when you're in a disagreement with somebody, you don't want to fight them. You don't want to run from them. You want to think to yourself, where is the goodness in this person that I can relate to in some way? A whole different way of doing it. Okay. And then part of that limbic system is your little tiny walnut, almond-shaped amygdala, and your hippocampus, where all your immediate memories are processed. Your amygdala is basically the fear center of your brain. You quiet the amygdala, then you don't have those emotions happening for you. And then above the limbic system is our neocortex. That's where we do our higher thinking. That's the higher mind. And the highest of the higher mind is the prefrontal cortex, right? The executive part of your cortex. It's the brain's brain. It's where the executive functions are: focusing attention, predicting the consequences of one's actions, anticipating events in the environment, impulse control, managing emotional reactions, screening out distractions. The way to use the brain properly is that information should be flowing up from lower centers up toward higher centers. The higher centers should be sending guidance and control down over the lower centers, because as you go up in the levels of this hierarchy, there are qualities that emerge that are not present at other places within it, like the ability to think about the future and the past. Your monkey mind doesn't have future and past. It's all right now. It's all right now. So when the soldier dives underneath the couch because he hears a car backfire going off, he's not sitting in the middle of the city with cars backfiring. He's back in that trench again, because the monkey mind doesn't know. That's how they get stuck. Well, of course, what it is that my work has been was to use what we have, which is neuroplasticity. People are just starting to talk about this in maybe the last 10, 15 years, right? Maybe 20, but it was clear and obvious to me in the work that I did for many years back then. And it still is there now, and lots more proof of it. And I would say also that serious health challenges, I mean, yes, most of the things that that you're working with, that you're getting headaches or stomach aches or diarrhea or irritable bowel syndrome, on and on and on and on. But sometimes you have to you deal with severe problems. One afternoon, this was back in the 70s, I got a call and a fax from a local physician who told me that he was seeing a young woman who had severe ulcerative colitis. And after several years, it had reached an extreme point. Her weight was down to less than 70 pounds. She was severely malnourished, continuous diarrhea. And the only thing that he had to offer her was to completely remove her colon. But because of her young age, he really didn't want to do this to this young woman who looks, like an escapee from one of Hitler's camps. So he had heard something of my success in working with psychophysiological medicine. He requested that I come to see her in the hospital. And these photographs are pictures of her as I found her in the hospital. I saw her, I think, 12 or 15 times, and I used the selective awareness exploration that I'll share more with you in a few moments. And there she is. This is about 2 or 3 months later. Happy and active and almost completely free of any kind of bowel symptoms. I spoke to her last 30 years later, and she still has not had a recurrence of the ulcerative colitis she had before and is living a healthy life. So this has very, very powerful changes can take place using the tools that I'm sharing with you now. This is what I have. I got rid of my medical practice after about 5 years. It was clear what I wanted to do. So I sold my x-ray machine and all of the gadgets that I had. And this is what I've been doing since 1974, specifically working with people. And because nobody else was doing it, I've been exploring and managing to stay 20 or 30 years out in front of the crowd. They're starting to use this. In fact, all of the major training centers are using deep relaxation. They're using meditation. They're using guided imagery. They're using the same cognitive restructuring techniques. So what the basic approach that I used with this young woman was the selective awareness exploration, in which we really examined what's going on inside. While I was in high school, I used to repair radios. Now, let's say you have a radio and there's a hum coming out of the speaker. You go in with a signal tracer and you examine right at the beginning of before it's coming in the speaker. You hear the hum. Then you go back to the stage between the demodulator and the audio amp. And let's say you still hear the hum. That means that the hum must have come in before that. So you go back to that spot between your intermediate frequency filter and your demodulator. And let's say you still hear it there. And then you go back to position 4 between the mixer and the IF amplifier filter, and you don't hear it. Then you know that hum has originated between steps 3 and 4. Well, I figured, why not do the same thing with human beings? So if a person comes in with a symptom, be it physical, mental, emotional, or behavioral, whatever it might be, some recurring chronic, I'm not talking about people who fall off a ladder. But what I will do is I will first go back to I'll have a person go back, say, I want you to go back to sometime in the last few weeks that you had this reaction and tell me what's going on. And then I'll say, go back to last month, go back to sometime last year, and finally go back to childhood. And if possible, back to the very first time in your life that you ever had that experience. And then I desensitize and rescript their behavior following that. And then I give them recordings to practice with at home. So I'll tell you a brief case history of Clara. Clara came in complaining of ongoing feelings of anxiety, GI distress, frequent headaches, irritable bowel syndrome. She had these feelings as far back as she could remember. In my office, once she was in a satisfactory state of relaxation and we had identified a safe place for her, I asked her deeper mind to guide her back to a few minutes before one of her more recent events. And in that scene, her teenage son was threatening to quit school and take a low-paying job. And sitting there in my office, she had a recrudescence of those feelings inside of her. I guided her to relax, and the feelings went away. Next, I suggested she go back a year or two to another time. And this time it had to do with the threat of her being laid off from work due to the pandemic. And again, she had the same symptoms. I helped her quiet those symptoms, and we went back to a few more events, and every one of them fit that same pattern. Finally, I requested of her deeper mind that she go back to 1 minute before the very first time in her life she'd ever had this reaction and these feelings. In this scene, she was seated with her family around the dinner table, just finished eating a huge, delicious dinner, and suddenly an argument breaks out between her parents. She had never seen anything like this, but they were furious. And the ire rose to the point their father threatened to divorce the mother, and he got up and stomped out of the house. Clara became aware of enormous feelings of anxiety there in my office as she relived it. Okay, what happened in the real event? The ongoing digestion of her dinner was interrupted by the stress reactions, shunting the blood away from her digestive organs, leaving them cramped and painful. In her mind, she feared that her life was over. She felt extremely frightened. And typical of what happens when this sort of situation occurs in early childhood, there's a kind of split that happens in the psyche, in which one part of the person, Clara, is so overwhelmed with irreconcilable feelings and intense terror that the conscious attention switches. It focuses on the pain that she's feeling, and she suppresses awareness of this intolerable situation. There's a kind of splitting that takes place. Instead, she decides that she's going to clean off the table, and she's going to do a spectacular job of washing the dishes, and she's going to take care of everything around the house so perfectly that her parents will definitely not separate. And she is a very good girl. The parents turn out not to separate, and something in her says, yeah, this is because I clean up after everybody. And that's what she's always been. But whenever she's confronted with a situation that in some way bears some similarity to that originally event, then those symptoms come back to her. As we went back through each of her symptoms, and she would feel them, and I would say, okay, let them go. Now let's go back to the next memory. Feel the feeling, let it go. Feel a feeling, let it go. By the time we get back to the sensitizing event, we have control over those feelings. And here she's able to, and what people often will do, will come up with memories that they've never had before. And those memories have been at the source of what their problems were. Well, from this point on, I now guide her back through, well, as she's back there, I tell her as an adult, if you saw this happening to a young girl, what would you tell her if you could whisper in her ear? She'd say, well, I'd say, look, this is your parents' problem. They're upset. You're going to be okay. And it's going to be all right. And then I tell her, go back and become the little girl again, and imagine you can hear your own voice telling you those things. And I have her relive that extremely painful memory, which she reacted so strongly to, but she handles it calmly. And then I have her go through all the other memories that we had seen and reprogram her behavior. I then ask her to look forward into the future and imagine a kind of situation that might have caused that problem in the past for her, but to visualize herself handling it with aplomb, with calm, as though it's the easiest thing in the world. And then I give her a tape to take home. Now it's not a tape, but I send something home and she downloads it. It's about a 10 or 15 minute experience that does all of that rescripting, and she's to practice that 2 or 3 times a day. And that's basically what brings about, all of the amazing changes that have given me a very successful and very joyful life. And I'll just mention, if you're interested, my book, the first book I published, 1973, called Selective Awareness, The New Science of Mind-Body Medicine, in which no one would publish it, of course. Back then, nobody would publish it. It would be like having somebody publish something on psilocybin therapy, ridiculous. But I published it and made it available throughout the country because my goal was to change medicine as it had been practiced. I had no money, a poor student, coming and now a poor veteran. But people got their hands on it, and it's full. I give all the definition, how to do things. I have scripts that you can read. And a lot of people, many people worked with it and kind of set the wheels in motion for what we now see as being a medicine of mind, body, emotion, and spirit. The other things that you'll find on the website: Creating Your Island of Peace and the Love Meditation, Letting Go of Stress, it's the most popular of all, Victory Over COVID, which I've gotten really good results back, reports from people. And in this whole series of programs, how to avoid, how to prepare your body to fight off COVID. And then once you have it, how to activate your immune system, and also how to deactivate it in case you have something like a cytokine storm. And it's really useful just about any kind of viral disease. Then there's Change the Channel on Pain, 4 different techniques teaching a person to take care of their own pain. We could have saved a lot of opioid deaths with that. Healing Journey was one of the first that I made, was a general healing process to awaken your possibility of self-healing. Once I had put about 30 years into studying the field of deep healing, I wrote the classic book that I wrote called Deep Healing. And again, this gives many cases and also self-applied guidance at the end of each chapter. It's not, well, it's a fun book to read. It's slow going because there's a lot of information there. And then I also have been very interested in the fact that exactly the same processes that can heal individuals can heal groups and families who I work with. And I do a lot of work now online. This way I can see people throughout the world. I work primarily by means of Zoom, but it's basically the same thing. Of helping people learn how to use their mind, teach them these mind tools. And back in 2009, I self-published this book, which is Our Culture on the Couch, 7 Steps to Global Healing. And I put forth a theory at that time, was that we were thinking in the wrong paradigm, that we were developing a polarity, and that if we did not change our way of thinking, that polarity was going to threaten our very existence as a nation and as a planet. And I guess being able to say "I told you so" is at least that's a little bit of a consolation. The imagery on healing our planet is just a way of attuning ourselves to the kinds of thinking that can help us heal our planet. And it is up to us. Nobody's going to do it. It's up to every single one of us. And there's a way for that to happen. Healing from cancer has proven to be very effective. We opened the very first cancer center back in the mid-70s, where we actually got together with people who had cancer and taught them to be able to say cancer and showed them techniques by which they could do lots of things. And I have, it's also a video on cancer in which I have maybe a dozen people who had death diagnoses who had come to our cancer center. And there are alive, telling their story and living happy lives 15 years later. So, and there's also, if you go to what's it, Amazon Prime, there's a video that you can watch. It's called Live Life, and there's about 6 or 7 of my patients are featured in that movie, and you get a chance to actually see how people have dealt with it and what they experience from going through these kinds of therapy. And so, and there's also videos like this one, The Power of Your Mind to Manage Stress and Heal Your Body. Because you're in practice, I'd advise you try sharing these with people. There's a huge list. Any of them will work because they all have relaxation, and each particular one shows how to apply the deep relaxation technique to ameliorate the symptoms and the source of people have. Okay. I should have made it shorter. Sorry if I had to rush through it, but
You did
if you're
just fine,
interested,
Doc.
you can always go back and look at it because it'll be online, right?
Right, you did just fine.
Oh, thank you.
What a treat. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So if you have any questions, I'm here.
I think was there any in the chat?
I got a question while you're looking. Because you've been around a long time, I'm putting this in perspective.
Yeah.
And when you were treating patients, I was flying jets. So you go way back in time.
Wow.
And I was wondering, have you dealt much with the cranial therapy and osteopathy or the primary respiratory mechanism?
No, I haven't. But one of my students developed something called EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, worked with quite a number of veterans as she was perfecting this. We were working at the VA center in Menlo Park, where I was living at that point, and that's been my main contribution back in that direction. What kind of jets were you flying?
Oh gosh, just the trainer jets, T-38s, and
Oh, yeah.
then flew tactical C-130s.
All right.
And then I got busted up and wound up recovering and going to medical school, right? That was my karma. So it was one of the best. So it was one of the best times of my life, and it led me to osteopathy. And that's why I asked that question. There's the osteopathic cranial rhythmic impulse, or primary respiratory mechanism, they call it, is one of the ways of getting two-way street, getting to a relaxed state and going to the relaxed state so you can feel the rhythm, right? So anyway, just curious about that, because you're talking about a lot of long time stuff you've been doing. You're just so far ahead of the crowd.
Yeah. Well, when I was in college, the dean called me into his office, and I figured, oh God, I've been busted. I smuggled a piano into our room, and we used to cook, and we used to do all this. And it wasn't none of that at all. He called me because he wanted to share the results of my vocational guidance test, which he said he had never done in his 20 years, but he had to share mine because everything I was completely interested in or had no interest in just in terms of what I was going to be probably going to be satisfied with. And the 3 top things he said I should look at, because I was headed to be a mathematician or a physicist or something like that. Yeah, that's where my interest was, but was a YMCA physical director, a minister, or an osteopath. And I had come out of the inner city.
Don't
The last
say
thing
it,
I
John.
wanted to do was run a community center. I couldn't be a minister because I didn't believe in God. I figured that would be a problem. And I didn't know what an osteopath was. So I went to medical school. But if someone had told me, I would have gone. I would have been a
But here,
sure.
this is the osteopathic crowd. We're
Yeah.
so much the osteopathic crowd.
That we're
We
not.
we are reviled and attacked, but that's okay. We're cool with it. We're talking about the same things you're talking about, but and you're
Absolutely.
talking about it in deep terms, spiritual
Yeah.
language. So we're doing the same thing, and I'm glad you're.
Yes. Yes. Well, we can
Thanks
thank
for sharing.
Mr. Flexner for all of that, and Mr.
Yeah,
Rockefeller. It's like they just creamed everything that didn't that wasn't based upon petroleum products, basically. So it's a shame what they did and set us back so far. And like I said, I think this is what's screwing up the world, is that we have closed our eyes to these things.
I'm going to check your site and see what you've suggested saving us, because you're aware of how bad it's become, and so have we. And some of this is basic science, and that's where Dr. Clearfield comes in. He's
Yeah.
just, like you said, what's going on with the mind. Bill says what's going on with the hormones and the biochemistry, and we need to listen to both.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Well,
Someday we'll
wonderful.
get it together, John. That's all. Well,
Yeah.
There's a couple of questions. I'm not sure. First one here is, what is your opinion of acupuncture as an anti-stress technique? If you have any opinion.
Acupuncture seems to work in quite a number of cases. I've seen it work. I've seen it not work, but I've seen it work enough that it's it's more than placebo in my experience.
I've done acupuncture for more than 30 years. So, and again, I mean, I agree, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. We try to sort of cherry pick the patients that after all this time will have good success with. So
yeah, you can always pop my Shen Meng anytime you want to.
Those of you don't know what that is, that means Spirit's Gate, right?
That's right.
A lot of great class and attaboys and things like that. One question here is, which book or video do you recommend to learn your methods, so that we can teach our patients?
So that you can what? Teach
our patients. Any of your books that would at least get us on the.
I think deep healing.
Deep healing, okay.
Yeah, deep healing is plenty. Deep healing and letting go of stress and writing your own script. And those are the audios. Writing your own script is really done in a fashion the person can actually do their own selective awareness exploration and re-script patterns in their lives.
That's the one that seems to resonate with me, John. I don't know about you. So
and as for the book, if you don't like to read, I also read it to you. So there's a there's a performed version of it out there, so you can listen while you're driving to work.
Any thoughts on devices, Bluetooth based, that help promote parasympathetic states?
Bluetooth based.
I'm just reading the question.
Yeah, I don't.
Dr. Nario, you still here?
Bluetooth.
I guess not. Okay, he's the one who asked.
Yeah, there's a wearable device. It's literally like a band. You put it on your head and it generates electromagnetic and some electrotherapy, low currency, and it's remotely can be controlled. I used to work with them for changing the neuroplasticity of the brain and treating it. But I have something to say here. I mean, I think if you go back to Dr. John, he just said it, and I just want to confirm it and remind everybody that Dr. William Bale is restoring the homeostasis using natural products, biologically compatible products, whether it's peptides or hormones or polyphenols and all the good stuff that he does, right? And what you're doing, you are doing cognitive therapy, and you're taking advantage of training the frontal loop and giving them the instructions, and release the stress and events of the past and all that by cognitive therapy, we call it, and biofeedback. And you're able to increase oxytocin and the happy molecules, same like what Dr. William is doing, through his peptides and polyphenols and things like sex hormones. He's increasing those happy molecules, which are antioxidant and anti-inflammatory, and it helps to definitely decrease the stress and inflammation and restoring the homeostasis. So you're using the frontal lobe and the power of the oxytocin, because oxytocin is I think I have a very big lecture on it. It just helps to restore the homeostasis of the body in every aspect of your chemistry in your body, especially oxytocin. So I think that's what you're doing.
I'm an oxytocin fan. It's what I'll do. It's like gamma aminobutyric acid and oxytocin, especially oxytocin it's an amazing thing, and it's been trained out of people, unfortunately. So anything that can help us with that is great.
Well, that's what you're doing. You're actually treating people through the cognitive therapy to increase the happy molecule, including oxytocin. And those happy molecules, dopamine and serotonin, oxytocin, all those good stuff, it helps to, and the parasympathetic, it helps to decrease the inflammation. And you're treating psychosomatic disease. And it's not placebo effect, it's a real effect. I mean, sometimes when patient has pain and you just tell them, hey, I'm giving you a medication that's going to help you relieve your pain, and it's just normal saline, and just by telling him that the expectation, all that stuff, you're increasing his oxytocin in his body, and people will think it's a placebo effect, but it's a real changing in chemistry of the body with your psychotherapy, cognitive therapy, and you're very good. You have this kind of that voice, and you need a skill really to. It's not anybody can do it. You
That's
really
right.
need to have that kind of calming and charm and charisma, and people trust you, confident. You cannot just be anybody talking and thinking you can treat patients using psychosomatic. You really have to have the things that you're equipped with throughout your 30 years. It involves many things. It's not just saying words that you're saying, because if I repeat the things that you say to the patient, it's not going to be as you saying it. So
Yes.
I congratulate you for your journey.
Well, thank you very much, John.
Are you prescribing a lot of oxytocin, Dr. Miller?
Not the chemical, just helping people induce its flow.
Okay.
By going back to when you delivered your child and women, I think you can really boost the oxytocin just by reliving that experience again and again, or any deep loving experience, or even to a certain degree spiritual experiences, epiphanies in a person's life. Because when a person relives this scene with clarity, the brain actually emulates exactly the state that it was in at the time those things happen, and therefore it calls forth the same chemicals that were called forth at that time. And when it's oxytocin, it's oxytocin. That's my beliefs. I haven't been able to sample their bloodstream yet, but maybe that'll happen.
Oh, it's difficult. We used to do urine 24-hour urine collections to try to get some sort of sample, and there was only one place in North Carolina that sort of did it, and I haven't done it in a long, haven't run them in a long. Would the opposite be the same effect? If we could get a measurement, would it be diminished in someone who had a severe PTSD syndrome?
Yeah, because the whole oxytocin, healing, life, it's all about what I call love with a capital L, the urge to merge, the tendency to get together with those who are in harmony, that you're resonating with to become more, whether it's two people getting married or family clinging together. And when you have PTSD, a person's pretty shut down. They want to avoid being one with anything because they don't want to be one with that bullet that may be coming across the ramparts next. So they can't trust their wife. They can't trust their little kids for that matter. But so it's really the opposite of being able to trust, and trust being such a big piece of love.
Okay, great. All right. I'm not sure where to take it from there, but
Well,
but
how
I
about
can't thank you enough for being with us. And this was a real treat. I know for
Great.
myself and everybody that was on here.
oh, great.
And please stay in touch. I hope you allow us to put you on our mail list. We're here every Tuesday.
Please do.
Coming up in October, which is just a couple of weeks away, will be 3 years. We've been here every Tuesday.
Excellent.
And,
Excellent.
And you know what our reward was for that, right, John? So,
Right.
I just a couple of housekeeping. I'm trying to find a venue. The time frame is I forgot was Christmas time. So what we're talking about is we're trying to put together a quick little live and online in-person conference. We haven't done one in over a year, and it's probably time. So we're looking in the Reno area because it's easier for us here. But we'll do it online also, so we don't leave anybody out. If anybody's got a venue near where they are, let me know. Reno apparently is a popular place for Christmas parties, so we're running into a little bit of that. Anybody who'd like to participate, Dr. Miller, please let us know. And again, we can do it online, so you don't have to leave home. We're looking for a CME partner, and that's a whole nother story. So next week, Dr. Halassa, you still here? Before you leave, Dr. Halassa is going to be telling us about ivermectin and probiotics. So as an adjunct for the work that he's doing. And the week after that, I don't have anybody yet. So if anybody's got something they'd like to present, please let me know. I may or may not. I'm going to visit the grandkids on Friday, and like the last time I was there, I may or may not be on next week. So we will make sure that everything's running smoothly, though. John, you got anything for us?
Everything's beautiful.
How's the medical school?
Everything's beautiful. All good. No
Okay.
complaints.
Okay, and anybody else have any comments or questions? Thank you so much. And Dr. Miller, if you're still here, thank you. And if you're not, still, again, thank you. We had a real treat tonight. If you go look at his website, and did you find it, John? I think it's emmettmiller.com. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, I did a lot of good information on it, and
all his
quite amazing.
all his videos, and he's been a pioneer for 1,000,001 years. We're still a small group, but we bring you all the good stuff.
True.
Okay, anybody else have any comments, questions? If not, we'll say I'm going to say good night. Dave, if you could hang on for just a second. I want to ask you something. If I can find you here, or did you already go? Yeah. Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions? We'll say good night, and I'll see you next week. Say hello to Sylvia for me.
Yahoo.
And okay, everybody.
Good night.
Night. Hey, Dave, are you available in 2 weeks to present?
In 2 weeks?
Yeah, the 26th. If you could do that.
Let me see. 26th. Yeah, I should be able to do that.
Okay, that's too close, like, we can make it another time, but
What would you like to hear about?
I want to, can we do the EMF, your EMF stuff, and
Okay,
even the ginseng.
okay.
That should take an hour, right?
Yeah, I can combine those two.
Okay, you got anything new? I mean, want to do exercise?
Well, the only thing, maybe everyone would like to know a little bit about what's happening now with exosome stem cells and
You can do that too.
that development.
Yeah.
Yeah, we put together a clinical study that's kind of in process. It's not a clinical study, it's a clinical assessment where we're combining those together, the PMF, the
Mhm.
fermented ginseng, and the exosomes,
Mhm.
and a life extension blood test, 3 of them.
All
So I
right,
could touch on that.
that's what we want to know. Okay,
Okay, very good.
thank you so much.
26. Okay, I'll prepare. Thanks.
All right. Okay, all right, everybody. Thank you so much. This will be up on the website as soon as I can render it and all. Okay, and thank you so much. We'll see you again next.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.